Good morning, and the audiobook for today is When Questions Abound. Now, when I first started writing Lost Memories and New Beginnings, I realized very quickly, I don't have the detective in this story to actually get the police side of it. And I thought about putting it in, but I didn't for that book. I did end up later on in Safe in My Arms, which just released. You'll see that it includes both the main characters and then also the police who are involved, because I just think it makes for a more well-rounded story. But I didn't take that route with Lost Memories and New Beginnings. However, I felt that Jordan's piece that he played in this book was really important. So I ended up writing a short story, taking some of those scenes from Lost Memories and New Beginnings, but then putting them in Jordan's perspective. So this is a little short story. You get to follow Jordan a little bit more, who you met in Fire Games. And so I hope you guys enjoy this.
Chapter 1. Help! Is there a doctor in here? Detective Jordan Graves pulled his attention from his girlfriend Cassidy to see who needed assistance. A man stood in the doorway of the restaurant, a frantic look on his face. There was an accident. A woman's been injured, but the guy who hit her took off. She looks bad, though. Are any of you doctors? I am. Dr. Brody Kavanaugh fought his way through the crowd, followed by 2 or 3 other people Jordan recognized from the hospital. We better go too, Jordan said to Cassidy. He flashed an apologetic look at Graham, his brother and co-owner of Fire Dreams, before hurrying outside with the rest of the crowd. The sun had set, but the street lights illuminated the area, and down the street Jordan could see the car, a red sports car, folded in a C shape. Get the jaws of life, Bubba, one of the firemen ordered as he sprinted towards the car. Around him, the rest of the firemen spread out. Some ran toward the firehouse a block away to get the truck and ambulance, and others followed Bubba, including Cassidy. Jordan glanced around for the man who had entered the restaurant. He stood a few feet away, wringing his hands together. You. Jordan hurried over to the man. I'm Detective Graves. Did you see the accident happen? He pulled out his notepad to write down the details. It happened so fast. I heard the crash, and then it sounded like he gunned it. Why would he gun it if he knew he'd hurt someone? The man was rambling, clearly in shock. Can you tell me what the vehicle looked like that hit her? The man turned to face Jordan, and for a moment his eyes were clear. It was a truck, a black Ford truck. Did you see anything else? A license number by chance? Jordan asked. It just drove off. Why would anyone do that? Clearly, this man wasn't going to be of any more help. His state of shock was simply too great, at least for now. Can I get your name? Jordan asked. Perhaps the man would remember more when the shock wore off. It's Ethan Bauer. Jordan took down the name and number of the man, though he doubted they would contact him again. He appeared to have supplied as much as he could. Having finished his interview of the witness, Jordan walked over to the wrecked car. The firemen had succeeded in getting the woman out, and the ambulance had driven off a few minutes ago. That left the car as his domain. His and Al's, his female partner. Find anything yet? Al was already poking around inside the car. She popped her head out and held up a mangled phone. Found this, but there is no purse, no wallet. I haven't checked the trunk yet, but I can't find anything to let us know who this woman was. Did you get anything from the witness? Not much. He said he heard the wreck while he was closing shop. When he looked, the black truck was speeding off. He didn't get a license plate number. Al sighed and crossed her arms. We better hope the driver makes it then, because all I have right now is a lot of questions. Jordan agreed. Can you pop the trunk? Al leaned back inside, but though he could see her tugging on the lever, nothing was happening. Is it working? No, it must have gotten damaged in the accident. He scanned the area. Bubba and Luca were just putting the jaws of life back on the truck. Bubba, can you guys use that on the trunk? We can't get it to open. Wish you'd said something earlier, Bubba said with a teasing smile. This thing isn't exactly light, but Luca could use the extra workout. Speak for yourself, Luca retorted. Jordan stepped back as the 2 large men approached. The hum of machinery filled the air again until they were able to cut a hole allowing access to the trunk. Jordan joined Al at the back as Bubba and Luca headed back to the truck. With her flashlight, they examined the trunk, but there was nothing there either. Guess that's it, Al said. Yeah, I'll write down the license plate number and we can run it tomorrow. Perhaps that will give us something to go on. Sounds good. Sorry the opening of your restaurant was interrupted, but it looks like it'll be a great place. Jordan looked back at the restaurant he and Graham had worked so hard to open. It certainly wasn't the opening night they had planned for, but he hoped this night wouldn't keep people from coming back. Thanks, Al. I hope so. Guess I'll see you tomorrow. Chapter 2. Sir, I'd like permission to investigate this hit and run further, Jordan said as he looked at his notes from the night before. You have reason to believe it was more than an accident? Jack Stone, head of the unit, asked as he looked at the board of their current cases. It was rather quiet at the moment, for which Jordan was glad. Just a feeling, sir. The witness said the truck didn't even bother to slow down, which was supported by the lack of brake marks at the scene. Plus, we found no wallet, no purse, nothing in the car besides the woman's cell phone. It just feels wrong. Jordan had no concrete evidence that it was anything but an accident, but he had long ago learned to trust his gut, and his gut was telling him there was more to this case. Stone turned from the board and fixed Jordan with his classic stony stare. 2 days. If something hasn't come up that proves this wasn't an accident, you let it go. Understood? Crystal. Thank you, sir. He looked over at Al, who was working on something at her desk. Al, you want to come with me to the hospital? I'd like to see if our victim made it through the night, and if she remembers anything. Al nodded and grabbed the mangled phone. Yep, let's go. I was looking for traffic cams, but there was nothing pointed at that intersection. Figured. Even with all the traffic cameras in the city, they rarely seemed to catch a break from them on any case they worked. Hopefully our victim will have some information. A few minutes later, they pulled into the hospital parking lot. After a brief stop at the desk to sign in and declare their weapons, they headed toward the ICU. I was hoping we would find you here, Jordan said as he spied Dr. Brody Kavanaugh near the main ICU desk, studying a clipboard. Brody, this is my partner, Al Parker. The woman had a phone in the car, he said, holding up the object, but no wallet. Is she awake yet? Brody glanced up at them. She is, but she doesn't remember anything, not even her name. Al blinked at him. Is that normal? Will she get it back? Brody shrugged as he replaced one clipboard and picked up another. I don't know. She hit her head pretty hard and sustained a concussion, but the CT didn't show any lasting damage, although it did show swelling. My guess is that she will, but I can't give you a timeline. Memory loss was certainly not what Jordan had been hoping for, but perhaps with the right questions they could jog her memory. Is she able to talk? Can we ask her some questions? Brody regarded Jordan and flashed a concerned stare. She is capable of speaking, but don't push her too hard. Rest is important for her right now. And again, I don't think she remembers much, although she does think someone was after her. Jordan's ears perked up at that. She does. What did she say? Not much, Brody said with a shrug, just that she remembered being afraid and thought someone was after her. I was about to refer her to psych for an examination. Jordan's jaw clenched and he exchanged a glance with Al. Hold off on that for a while, will you? She might be right. We found no brake marks on the road, and our witness said the truck didn't even try to stop. My gut says this might not have been an accident, and we are determined to find out who hit her and why. Which room is she in? Room 6. Brody pointed behind him. Jordan motioned to Al, and the two of them headed toward the room Brody indicated. The door was open, and Jordan knocked softly on the jamb so as not to startle the woman. Pardon me, ma'am, but I'm Detective Graves, and this is Detective Parker. Do you think we could ask you a few questions? The woman lifted her hand a few inches and motioned them inside. You can try, but I don't remember anything. The doctor already asked. A small smile pulled at Jordan's lips. Well, no offense to Dr. Kavanaugh, but he's not a detective, so he might not have asked the right questions. He held out the broken phone. Do you recognize this? As the woman looked at it, he assessed her injuries. Her right foot was in a makeshift cast, cuts and bruises covered her right leg and arm, and a bandage wrapped around her head. Though she stared at them with her right eye, the left was purple, blue, and swollen shut. She had definitely taken a beating. It was a miracle she was alive. A spark of recognition flared in the woman's eye before she shut it again. "That's my phone, isn't it?" "We pulled it from your car, so we believe it was your phone." "I was going to use it," she said slowly, as if coaxing the words from memory. "But it was on the passenger seat and I couldn't reach it. But I can't remember why I was going to use it." "Unfortunately, it's destroyed, and there was no purse or wallet inside the car that we could find. Do you know why you might have been driving without your license?" She opened her mouth to reply, but then paused. Her eye opened again and looked from him to Al and back again. "Am I in trouble, officers?" He stared at her for a second before the realization of her hesitation made sense. Then he chuckled softly. "For driving without a license? No. You should always carry it, and you can be fined for not having it, but we're not here to issue you a ticket. We're more concerned with the accident. Our witness says the black truck hit you, but we aren't sure if the accident was on purpose or not. Do you remember anything?" "I don't think it was an accident. I can't remember why, but I think someone was after me. Did the witness help at all?" Al stepped forward. "He wasn't able to supply us with much, unfortunately, so we're hoping this phone might jog some memories." "I wish it did, but I have nothing more." "That's okay. It will probably come back." Jordan was about to thank her when his phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket and turned away slightly when he recognized Stone's number. "Detective Graves?" "Jordan, are you with the hit-and-run victim?" "Yes, sir. We are here now." "Did Stone have information?" "Ask her about the name Tia Sweetchild." Jordan glanced back at the woman. "Tia Sweetchild?" "Yes. The license plate you ran just came back as a rental car. I called the company and they said a Tia Sweetchild rented the car. The funny thing is, her address is in California, so she's not from here." "Interesting. If she wasn't from Illinois, what was she doing here?" "Okay, sir." Jordan hung up the phone and returned to the side of the woman's bed. "Does the name Tia Sweetchild ring a bell for you?" "Is that me? Am I Tia?" she asked. "The car you were driving was rented to a Tia Sweetchild, so yes, we believe so. However, the address listed on the rental agreement is in California, so we're not sure what you would be doing here in Illinois." The woman paused, and he wondered what she was thinking. Did the name sound familiar to her? Was she simply pretending not to know? "I have no idea what I was doing here, but now that we know my name, we should be able to find out some more about me, right?" "We'll certainly do our best," Al said. "If you remember anything else, please call us." She handed Tia a white business card. "We'll be in touch as soon as we have more information," Jordan said. As they exited the room, he turned to Al. "What do you think?" "I think she's beat up pretty badly." "Yeah, but do you think she's telling the truth?" Al's lips formed a tight line. "I don't know, but something about this case bothers me. I think we better have a look into Tia Sweetchild." Jordan couldn't agree more. Chapter 3. Jordan sighed as he shut down his computer for the night. He had been hoping to find out more about Tia Sweetchild, but other than discovering she was an author of clean romance books, he had come up empty-handed. Maybe dinner would help. He pulled out his cell phone and dialed Cassidy's number. He hadn't had a chance to catch up with her since the accident, and he was missing her company. "Hey, Jordan," she said when the call went through. "Hey, Cassidy. You feel like dinner tonight?" "I'd love to," she said, sighing softly. "But I'm on shift tonight. Tomorrow, though, okay?" "Sure thing." Jordan shouldn't be upset that Cassidy had work, especially since his own job wreaked havoc on their plans a lot of the time as well. But he missed her. The opening of Fire Dreams had kept him busy in the evenings the last few weeks, and now there was this hit-and-run case. Hopefully things would slow down again soon. With a sigh, he headed out of the office and to his car. There was a restaurant down the street from his house. He could pick up a dinner and ponder the case as he ate. The unintelligible hum of conversation assaulted him as Jordan stepped into the dim atmosphere. He scanned the area, a habit he'd had even before becoming a cop, and was surprised to find Brody at the bar. Jordan didn't drink, but he was curious if Tia had remembered anything more. "You want to open a tab?" the bartender asked Brody. "No need," Jordan said, pulling out a $5 and placing it on the counter. Brody looked up at him in surprise. "It's on me. Grab that and follow me." "Were you following me, Detective?" Brody asked as he sat in the booth. "No, but I'm glad I ran into you. Did our patient remember anything more today?" Brody shook his head. "No, but I didn't really ask today. I did find out she was an author, though, and I brought in one of her books hoping it would help." Jordan's eyes narrowed. He hadn't shared the information with Brody yet. "How did you find out she was an author?" "I had dinner with Nick last night, and he recognized her name, so we Googled her. Anyway, when I showed her the book, she said she remembered something when she touched it." He paused, as if trying to remember her words. "A man saying, 'What are you doing here?' But that was all she could remember. She didn't even remember being an author. Should I be asking specific questions? Did you find something out?" Jordan blew out an agitated breath. "Not much more than that. But it just isn't sitting well with me. Why would anyone want to harm an author? She's not a big name like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, so I don't think it was about money. And she writes clean romance, so I doubt she offended someone enough to want to kill her. All I have are questions, the biggest one being, what was she doing here in the first place?" "I don't know." Brody shook his head and took a sip of his beer. "She said a woman visited her today and claimed she was in town for that reason." Jordan's head snapped forward. "What? She had a visitor? Why did neither of them tell him about this?" "Yes, she didn't remember the woman, but she hasn't remembered much. Why? Is that a bad thing?" Agitation filled Jordan. He would never solve this case if they didn't give him all the information. "It could be. We asked her to call us if anything else happened. We need to know everything if we're going to figure this out. I can't believe she didn't tell us she had a visitor. Did you get the woman's name?" Brody shook his head. "No, sorry, I was a little busy, but I can ask tomorrow. I'll go over myself tomorrow to ask. But please, Brody, we can't help if we don't know everything, even if it seems trivial." Brody gave a curt nod. "I understand. It seems she gets a few pieces of her memory back every day. Maybe we'll know more in a day or two." Jordan ran a hand across his chin. "Let's hope that's soon enough. But please keep an eye on her and call me if you learn anything. I just have a bad feeling about all of this." Chapter 4. "So I hear you had a visitor yesterday," Jordan said as he entered Tia's room. She looked up at him in surprise. "I did. How did you—" "I ran into Dr. Kavanaugh last night. I thought we told you to call us." "You asked me to call you if I remembered anything else. I didn't remember Deborah. She said we were friends and brought me my purse." Jordan sighed as he realized she was right. Next time they would have to be more specific. "Wait, did you say she brought you your purse?" Tia pointed to the nearby table. "I didn't remember much from it either before you asked. I remember buying it at a shop, and I remembered attending a movie and what kind of coffee I drink. Nothing that would change the world." "I'm going to need to examine your purse and its contents," Jordan said, plucking the purse from the table. Tia took a deep breath and her eyes shifted. "I did remember one more thing. Well, at least I think I did." "What's that?" "There's a note in the purse with the name Rico Riordan and a time on it. I think I was visiting him and not Deborah." "Interesting. Why would Deborah lie about that?" "I don't know. Maybe I was visiting them both and just remember him?" Jordan doubted that. More likely Deborah was lying about something. The question was, what? "Tia, I really need you to call me, or have Dr. Kavanaugh contact me if anything else happens. We can't protect you if we don't know everything." "I understand." Jordan wasn't sure she did, but he hoped so. There were already enough questions in this case. He didn't need any more. "I'll bring this back after we process it," he said, holding up the purse. "Remember, anything else." "I promise." He shook his head as he walked out of her room and back to his car. He loved his job, but dealing with a woman who remembered nothing was definitely proving challenging, especially if someone was out to get her. "Nice purse," Al said as he set the bag down on his desk. He shot her a smirk. "Very funny. It's not mine, it's Tia's. Evidently a visitor dropped it off to her yesterday. A visitor she neglected to tell us about." "We better get to work on that name before Stone finds out." She didn't have to tell Jordan twice. "Okay, you take the name Deborah and Rico Riordan. I'm going to go through the bag and see if I can get any fingerprints." While he suspected the only fingerprints he would find would belong to Tia and Deborah, he wanted to make sure nothing else slipped past him. Wait, what? Yeah, I'll be right there. Jordan shook his head as he ended the call. What was that about? Al asked. Jordan sighed and ran his hand across his chin. Evidently, Deborah came back to the hospital today. With a gun. Al's eyes widened. What? Yeah, she tried to kill Tia. She's claiming Tia was having an affair with Rico, her husband. Jordan shook his head, not sure how this had gone south so quickly. Stone is going to lose it. Keep digging while I go pick her up. Maybe that will at least help. Jordan grabbed his keys. He felt like he had just left the hospital, and here he was going back again. He pulled into the lot and hurried into the hospital, heading directly for the security office. Deborah Reardon sat with her hands cuffed and resting in her lap. A blank expression lay on her face. Has she said anything? Jordan asked as he signed the paperwork to take custody of Deborah. The security guard shook his head. Not since we dragged her from the room. She said plenty in the room, though. Dr. Kavanaugh wrote up a statement already. He handed it across the table. Jordan scanned it before folding it and placing it in his pocket. Thank you. Can you get a security guard posted outside Tia Sweetchild's room? That might be challenging, the security guard said with an apologetic grin. We're short-staffed as it is. Look, station someone there and I'll see if the police department can help with the cost. He hoped Stone would okay the cost, but figured with the attempt on Tia's life that he would find it somehow. Jordan turned to the woman. Let's go, Deborah. She stared at him with cool eyes, but didn't budge, forcing him to haul her up. You want to tell me why you tried to kill Tia Sweetchild? Her answer was a tilt of her chin into the air. Well, Jordan wouldn't push her. Stone would get the information he needed when he took a turn at questioning her. Deborah said nothing on the ride to the station, nor did she say a word as Jordan processed her and led her toward the holding cell. What the heck happened this morning, Jordan? Stone's angry voice filled the room after Jordan returned from placing Deborah in the holding cell. Jordan shook his head. It wasn't his fault, but Stone didn't often care about fault. He cared about results. Tia didn't call us when the woman visited yesterday. I found out about her late last night from Brody and went in this morning to talk to her, but we were still running her background. Our job is to stay on top of this, not clean up messes. Jordan nodded and shot a look at Al. She had briefed him on his way back with Deborah. I understand, sir. We've been working since I returned this morning, and we do have some information. Deborah Reardon is clean, but she is married to Rico Reardon. Stone's eyes narrowed. Rico Reardon. Why does his name sound familiar? Because his name has appeared on a few narcotics searches. So far, they haven't been able to pin anything on him, but they think he might be involved in a drug trafficking ring. A drug dealer? What was our amnesic author doing with a drug dealer? We're still working on that, Al said. But Rico also owns a publishing company, Press Books LLC. It's possible Tia didn't know he was a dealer and was meeting with him about a publishing opportunity. Stone stalked around the board, perusing the evidence. And what about the black truck? Jordan shook his head. No luck on that so far. Rico owns a Mercedes and a Mustang, and Deborah drives a Firebird. No black truck registered in either of their names. So we have nothing? Frustration flooded Stone's voice and his eyes as he turned back to them. We'll keep digging. You do that. I'll talk to Deborah, he said as he turned on his heel and stalked out of the room. Chapter 5. Jordan sighed as he headed out of the office for the night. He still didn't have as much information as he would like, but he had promised Graham to help out at Fire Dreams tonight. He didn't really feel like a shift, but a promise was a promise. Surprise flooded him as he pushed open the door and found himself face to face with Brody. Brody, what are you doing here? I was hoping I could talk to you about Tia and the woman from the hospital earlier. Jordan looked over his shoulder and then back at Brody. Stone wouldn't care that he filled the doctor in, but there was no need to share where other ears could hear. Not here. I'm headed over to Fire Dreams. Meet me there and I'll tell you what I know. But it isn't much. 10 minutes later, they sat in a booth. Jordan had procured a glass of water for each of them, along with a basket of chips, and persuaded Graham he would only be a minute. Still, the place was hopping, having recovered nicely from the spoiled opening a few days before, and Jordan kept glancing around, realizing he should be helping rather than sitting and talking. So, the lady from the hospital is indeed Deborah Reardon. If you or Tia had told us about her yesterday, we could have looked into her sooner, and possibly avoided the murder attempt. She's clean, but her husband Rico has a few questionable connections. What kind of questionable connections? Brody asked. On paper, he's the head of a publishing company, which might explain the connection to Tia. But we found some unusual activity with some known drug dealers. Nothing that points to him being directly involved, and narcotics has never been able to pin anything on him, but we're widening our search to be sure. Brody nodded and snagged a chip. Drugs? Really? Tia said she had a meeting with Rico, but she doesn't seem like the type to be into drug deals. Jordan took a sip of his water. Maybe she isn't. But I did a little more research on her today. It appears she stayed under the radar, at least recently. Evidently, a few months ago, she kind of lost it after trying to damage the reputation of a fellow romance author, Ava McDermott. She sent photos to tabloids and appeared on a few talk shows, claiming the relationship Ava was in was a fake one. I don't know why anyone would fake a relationship, but maybe if you're a public figure, it's more important. Brody nearly choked on his chip. What? I can't see her doing that. Jordan shrugged. Well, maybe the head injury changed her, or maybe she changed after the incident. She failed to do much except soil her own reputation. Regardless, it's clear Tia did know Rico. There's no other reason Deborah would have come after her. Perhaps she was talking to him about new publishing opportunities. We just don't know any more than that. Is there a chance she was having an affair with him, as his wife claimed? Brody asked before taking a drink of his water. Jordan hadn't found anything pointing to an affair, but there was still so much they didn't know. That I can't speak to, yet. But we'll be looking into Rico more. He shook some salt on a chip before stuffing it into his mouth. And what about the black truck? Did it belong to Deborah? Jordan shook his head as he finished chewing. No. Neither she nor her husband appeared to own one. So someone might still be after Tia. It's possible. Or it could just be that the accident was just that. An accident. But you don't believe that, do you? Brody asked. No, I don't. It's just a gut feeling, but I don't. I've talked with the hospital about posting a security guard outside her door as well. Jordan looked around again and waved at Graham behind the counter area, who was shooting him a glare. I have to help out here, but I promise to keep you in the loop of what we find. Thank you, Brody said as Jordan stood. Jordan nodded and hurried over to Graham. Sorry, it was about the case. It always is, Graham said with a sigh. But Jordan, if we are going to make this restaurant work, I need your help. I need you here mentally as well as physically. Got it. This was exactly why Jordan hadn't wanted to open a restaurant. Maybe if the restaurant continued to do well, they could hire more help, giving him more time off. Between work and Cassidy, he just didn't have a lot of time to spare. Chapter 6. Jordan leaned back and rubbed his eyes. He had been staring at the computer screen for hours, trying to find out more about Tia and the Reardons, but nothing was popping up. No other connection besides the publishing company, and even that was a guess. Coming up empty over there? Al asked from across the desk. Yeah, crickets. Thankfully, Stone had forgotten about the deadline after the attempt on Tia's life. But Jordan was starting to wonder if his gut was wrong, and the accident was really just an accident. Beside him, his cell phone rang. He glanced down, surprised to see a number he didn't recognize. Detective Graves, he said after punching the answer button. Jordan, it's Brody. Tia received some flowers this morning, and I think you need to come and see the card. The card is suspicious? Yes. I'm going to take her for a short walk, and then we'll be back. Brody's voice remained calm, as if he was trying not to scare Tia any more than she already had been. I'll be right there. Back to the hospital? Al asked, glancing up at him. Yes. Brody said Tia receives suspicious flowers. I shouldn't be long. When Jordan arrived at the hospital, he once again declared himself before heading to Tia's room. The flowers were on the table, but an examination of them revealed nothing out of the ordinary. However, the note left by her bed was another matter entirely. There were no words on the card, only a human face with its eyes and mouth sewed shut. It was creepy, to say the very least. Where do these flowers come from? He asked when Brody and Tia returned to the room a moment later. From the gift shop downstairs, usually, or from outside sources, Brody said as he wheeled Tia back to the bed. And how do they get delivered? Brody held out his hand and helped Tia stand and get situated back in the bed. An orderly generally brings them to the floor, and then either delivers them or gives them to the nurses to deliver. Valerie brought mine in, Tia supplied. Jordan glanced over at her before turning his attention back to Brody. I'm going to need to speak with her as well. Fine, I'll introduce you. Brody turned back to Tia. I'll check on you before I leave for the night. Jordan followed Brody out of the room and into the main ICU area. That's Valerie there, the one with the dark hair, Brody said, pointing. Valerie, can we have a moment? Valerie looked up at them, questions in her eyes, but she made her way over to them. The flowers you delivered to Tia Sweetchild this morning, how did they get here? Jordan asked. An orderly brought them up as they do every day. I distributed them to the correct rooms. Why? Her gaze fluttered from Brody to Jordan and back again. Jordan shot Brody a silencing look. It would be better to keep the information on the card to as few people as possible. I just need to investigate the situation a little more. Where is the gift shop? Downstairs, Brody said. I would show you myself, but I do need to check on the other patients. I'm sure I can find it, Jordan said. Thank you for your help, Valerie. Jordan left the ICU and headed down to the gift shop. It was a small, office-sized room stuffed full of baskets, animals, and balloons. Can I help you? Jordan looked over to see a young man, probably in his early 20s, stand up from behind the small counter. He quickly stashed something in his pocket, which Jordan assumed was a cell phone. Yes. Can you tell me who bought flowers for the woman in ICU room 6 today? He pulled back his jacket so the clerk could see the badge on his jeans. I'm not sure, but let me look. He tapped the screen on the tablet in front of him and scrolled with his finger. Sorry, the person paid in cash. We only take names if they pay with cards. Jordan was not surprised. He hadn't expected the person to leave a paper trail. Do you happen to remember them? The young man had the decency to look chagrined. I'm sorry, I don't. This is a part-time gig for me, just helping to pay for college. Is there a camera that looks into the shop? Jordan tried to keep his patience with the young man. He shrugged and dropped his eyes to his lap. You could check with security, but I just don't know. Thank you. Jordan was fairly certain that security would be a dead end as well, but he would be remiss if he didn't at least ask. The security guard in the office today was not the same one from yesterday, and Jordan wondered briefly how many security guards the hospital employed. Can I help you? The man asked when Jordan entered. Detective Jordan Graves. I was hoping to see camera footage that points to the gift shop. There is no camera on the gift shop, the security guard said. We don't have a large enough budget to cover a lot of the areas, so the cameras are only in the high traffic areas, entrances and the like. Jordan figured as much. After thanking the guard, he returned to the police station to see what progress Al had made. Dead end on the flowers? She asked. Yeah, creepy card though. He showed her the image, nodding as she grimaced. I'm going to send it to the lab for prints, but I doubt we'll find any. Whoever this is, they've taken care to not be noticed. Paid cash too. Did you find anything else out about Rico and Deborah? A little. Her eyes dropped to her computer screen. Evidently Rico is quite the playboy. He's had a string of women he's paraded around places, which explains why his wife was so angry. She probably thought Tia was one of those women. Narcotics said the Chicago office thinks he's involved with some deals there, but they can't prove any yet. They think this publishing company might be a front. If we can get this Rico, The Chicago chief would be very grateful, Stone said, joining the conversation. We'll keep doing our best, Jordan said. Chapter 7. Jordan stopped by the hospital on his way home in hopes of catching Brody on his way out. Until he was sure Tia was innocent, he felt safer sharing his intel with Brody and letting him decide how much to pass on. He obviously had a better idea of who Tia was since he saw her every day. Detective, did you find out anything more about the flowers? Brody asked as he approached. Jordan pushed himself off Brody's car and glanced around the empty lot. Unfortunately not. They were purchased at the gift shop here, but paid for in cash. The clerk couldn't remember who purchased them, and there's no camera that points that direction. We do have some new intel, though. It appears Rico Reardon may be involved in drug trafficking over in Chicago. He didn't come up on our initial radar because he doesn't deal here, but it looks like he might hold meetings here and use his publishing business as a front. Do you think Tia was helping him move drugs? Emotions struggled across Brody's face as if he didn't want to believe Tia could be involved in criminal behavior. While Jordan didn't believe Tia was a criminal, he had worked on the force long enough to know that sometimes people weren't as they seemed. We don't know what to think. It's possible she was involved, though nothing in her background suggests it. It's more probable she was there for the meeting she had scheduled, and may have stumbled across a secret meeting. Either way, we need to keep a close eye on her. She may not be as innocent as we think. Brody shook his head. Okay, thanks, Jordan. I'll do my best. Jordan nodded and returned to his car. He had another late shift tonight at Fire Dreams, but Cassidy had promised to stop by after her shift, and he was looking forward to seeing her. He felt like he hadn't seen her in days. Well, I didn't think I'd beat you in here, she said with a smile as he stepped behind the counter area. The restaurant didn't serve alcohol, but he and Graham had wanted a counter area where people could sit and be served quickly. He leaned in and placed a quick kiss on her lips. I'm sure glad you did. How was work? Slow, thankfully, she said. As a firefighter, her job was a lot like his, nicer when it was slow. I cleaned the truck today, broke up a bickering argument between Luca and Deacon, and avoided kitchen duty. So, all in all, a good day. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. When this case gets settled, how about we plan a movie night? She smiled at him. That sounds delicious, Detective Graves. So how is your case coming along? How is the woman? Jordan glanced around to make sure no one else was listening to their conversation, but thankfully tonight the counter area was slow. Most of the patrons had chosen booths or tables out in the main restaurant, and Cassidy was the sole patron at the counter. She's recovering, though she has memory loss. Someone's already tried to kill her, and I don't think the accident was an accident. I just worry something worse is going to happen, but I can't be at the hospital all day to protect her either. I asked for a security guard for her, but I worry that it still isn't enough. Cassidy laid a hand on his arm. I am sure you are doing all that you can. He hoped so, but if he was, why did it still seem as if it wasn't enough? Chapter 8. Jordan sighed as the fingerprint report came across his computer. Nothing, just as he'd expected. This case was a plethora of questions with no answers. Nothing? Al asked. No fingerprints, Jordan said as his phone rang. He pulled it out and punched the answer call button. Detective Graves. Jordan, it's Brody Kavanaugh at Fire Beach Hospital. We're in lockdown. A code silver was reported a few minutes ago in the ICU. I'm locked in the bathroom in room 6 with Tia. Jordan sucked in his breath, surprised at how calm Brody sounded. I'm on my way. Do you know what the weapon is? No, I haven't seen anything. I locked the door per protocol as soon as the announcement was made. Understood. I'm going to transfer you to a dispatch operator, and I want you to stay on the line until I get there. I'll try, but we're in the bathroom and I only had 2 bars. I don't know if they'll hold. Brody? Brody? Jordan held the phone out and looked at the screen. Grab your stuff, Al. We need to get to the hospital. What's going on? Stone asked, entering the room. Brody just called. There's a code silver at the hospital. Go, he said with a wave of his hand. Jordan rushed out of the room with Al close on his heels. Do we even know what we're getting into? Al asked as they climbed into his car. I'm not sure. Brody couldn't see the weapon or the perpetrator, so we go in carefully. And we check with security first. Hopefully, they put someone outside her room. He flicked the button to turn on the lights and siren and pressed his foot on the accelerator. The parking lot looked no different when they arrived, and Jordan wondered how they handled code silvers. Did everyone lock down in individual rooms as Brody did? Or was there another procedure for other areas? He realized he had no idea, and he probably should. After this case, he would familiarize himself with the hospital's procedures. The main hospital entrance opened for them, but the security guard there accosted them before they got very far. Are you here about the code silver? We are. Do we need to do anything special? The security guard shook his head. Tom is covering the door from inside. I'll radio him when we get there to let you in. Jordan and Al followed the security guard, whose name tag read Roger, down the hall to the ICU. The doors were indeed locked, but after a quick conversation with the guard inside, the door opened and the security guard ushered them in. Jordan scanned the area as he stepped in. Most of the patient room doors were closed. A doctor, a nurse, and another security guard hovered around a patient who held a scalpel in his hands. Was this the code silver? Cautiously, he and Al approached the small group. Is there anything we can do to help? Jordan asked. At the sound of his voice, the patient turned to look at Jordan, and the nurse jammed a syringe in his arm. The patient cried out in surprise, or pain, Jordan wasn't sure which, but he dropped the scalpel and folded to the floor. Looks like you already did, the doctor said. Thank you. Was that it? That was the code silver? Al asked. The doctor turned confused eyes on her. Did you want it to be worse? No, Jordan said, jumping in. It's just we received a call from Dr. Kavanaugh. Since there had already been an attempt on his patient's life, we assumed it was another one. Thankfully not. We'll make the announcement that the code silver is lifted, but you can go rescue Dr. Kavanaugh now, the nurse said. Jordan wasted no time. He hurried over to Tia's room, but the door was locked. Dr. Kavanaugh, he hollered, pounding on the door. You can open up. Al tapped him on the shoulder to grab his attention. Hold on there, Hulk. Let me get the key. Jordan watched her walk over to the nurse and return with the woman a moment later. The nurse produced a master key from her pocket and opened the room for him. Silence greeted them, and Jordan wondered if there had been more to the code silver that maybe the doctor and nurse didn't know about. Then he remembered Brody stating they were hiding in the bathroom. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pounded on the bathroom door. Dr. Kavanaugh, open up. It's Detective Graves. A moment later, the lock clicked and the door opened. Tia lay in the bathtub with her injured ankle propped up on the side, and both she and Brody blinked against the bright lights. Is it safe to come out then? Brody asked. It is, Jordan said. Evidently it was a patient who suffered a psychiatric break and grabbed a scalpel off a tray. I'm sorry, Brody said, after our conversation. You were right to do what you did, Jordan assured him. We still haven't found the driver of the black truck, or who sent Tia those flowers. And what you did made perfect sense. However, unless you need further assistance, we'll get back to work on finding the suspects. Wait, Detective Graves? Jordan turned to Tia and waited. I remembered more. I was there to see Rico about a publishing opportunity, but I turned it down when I found out he was married and looking for an affair. He kicked me out, but I had forgotten my purse. When I returned, he shoved me in a closet. I heard men's voices arguing, and I thought perhaps they were reporters out for a story on me, which is why I ran when I did. Did you see any of the men? Do you remember anything about them? Not their faces. When I stepped out of the closet, I looked left. They were on the balcony, but it was dark outside. I couldn't see their faces, but I felt the icy hatred in their gaze when they saw me. I didn't think they had followed me at first, but then the lights blinded me on the road. I slowed down, thinking maybe it was just teenagers out for a joyride. But when they didn't pass me, I figured they had followed me after all. Then the truck hit me. Jordan's face hardened and he exchanged a glance with Brody. Okay, thank you, Tia. We'll look into all of this and let you know what we find. Do the two of you need anything else?" "I think we'll be fine," Brody said. The look he flashed Tia held more than concern, and Jordan wondered if a relationship might bloom between the two of them. "Do you think we're looking for 2 cars then?" Al asked as they exited the room. Jordan shook his head. "I have no idea, but I suppose we have to assume so. Everything we learn about this case just brings more questions." "That's true, but we haven't even found the black truck yet. How do we find a second vehicle when we have no idea what it was?" Jordan didn't know. He just didn't know. Chapter 9. Jordan had just pulled into the parking lot of the police station when his phone rang again. His eyes widened as he looked at the number. It's Brody. Again. "What? We just left." Jordan nodded at her and then answered the phone. "Brody, what's going on?" "Sorry to bother you, Jordan, but Tia just informed me she had a new nurse yesterday." "Okay, I'm not following," Jordan said. "I didn't assign a new nurse. Maybe it's nothing, but it's the second time I've heard about this new nurse. One of our volunteers told me a new nurse tried to keep her from reading to the patients the other day, and Tia confirmed it was the same woman." With any other case, Jordan might consider this information innocuous, but he wasn't going to count anything out in this case. "I'll be right there." He ended the call and turned to Al. "Go tell Stone what we found. Brody says there's a woman I need to check into. Might be nothing, but definitely suspicious." "Be sure and watch your back," Al said as she stepped out of the car. "Always do," Jordan said before she shut the door. Then he pointed the car back to the hospital. "So tell me about this woman," Jordan said when he was back in Tia's room. "She's got shoulder-length dark hair, olive skin, and brown eyes. She wasn't wearing a name tag when she came in, so I don't know what name she is going by. But she looks young. Under 30, probably," Tia said. "All right. We'll inform the guard to let no one in," Jordan began. "We need to allow one nurse," Brody said, "to check on Tia if necessary." "Okay, one nurse, but no one else." Jordan agreed, though it didn't sit well with him. "Not until we find this woman and get her story." "Agreed. Sit tight, Tia. We'll be back soon." Even Brody's words didn't erase the apprehensive look from Tia's face, but she agreed. After a quick stop to inform the security guard not to allow anyone but Sophie into the room, Jordan and Brody set off in search of the mystery woman. Jordan wished they had a picture of the woman, but Tia couldn't travel quickly enough, and the volunteer wasn't at the hospital. They started in the ICU first, but after a glance into every patient room and the break room, no dark-haired unknown nurse appeared. "Where to next?" Jordan asked. Brody was much more familiar with the hospital than he was. "Let's check the surrounding areas and their break rooms. If she's after Tia, I doubt she will wander too far from ICU." They moved to the department closest to ICU, but it did not reveal the woman in question either. However, as they turned the corner to the break room, a dark-haired woman exited and headed away from them. "Stop," Jordan called. The woman glanced back at them and her eyes widened before she took off running down the hall. Jordan bolted after her, turning his head just long enough to holler back to Brody, "Go check on Tia." As he ran, he grabbed his phone and punched the number to reach Al. "Al, get over to the hospital and bring backup." He hung up before she could ask questions and shoved the phone back in his pocket. The woman was fast, and she had just burst through the stairwell door. He pushed it open behind her, hoping the woman wasn't carrying a gun. She looked up as the door opened, and it caused her to miss a step. She stumbled down the last 2, falling into the wall and allowing Jordan to catch up with her. "You're under arrest," he said, pulling her hands behind her back and slapping on a pair of handcuffs. "Want to tell me why you ran?" She shot him an icy glare but pulled her mouth into a tight line. "Fine. You'll talk to us soon. Although anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you." He continued spouting the Miranda rights as he led her back toward ICU. "Detective Graves, we have another one for you," the security guard said as Jordan entered the ICU. "Another one?" "Yes, a man tried to take out Tia's security guard, and then her with a syringe full of insulin. Thankfully, Dr. Kavanaugh arrived in time. They were both recovering. Jordan shook his head. How had this gotten so crazy so fast? Where is he? In the security office, the man said, waiting for you. Al and Stone appeared before Jordan could head that direction, and he filled them in. Let's pick them up and get them processed, Stone said, taking charge of the unknown woman. Jordan pulled out his phone when they reached the security office and snapped a picture of both the man and the woman. I'll meet you guys back at the station. I'm going to see if our clerk can identify either of these two. Stone nodded, and Jordan headed back toward the gift shop. Relief filled him when he found the same young man from earlier still behind the counter. He wasn't sure what the hours of the gift shop were or how long his shift was, but God was on his side today. Hey, remember me? He asked as he approached the counter. He looked up, stashing his phone under some papers. Yeah, sure. What can I do for you? I want to show you 2 photos and see if either of these people might be the ones who bought flowers for room 6. Okay, I can try. Jordan pulled up the picture of the man and then turned his phone toward the clerk. He scrunched his eyes at it, but shook his head. Sorry, he doesn't look familiar. All right, how about her? He flicked to the picture of the woman and repeated the process. The clerk nodded. Yeah, she looks familiar, only she wasn't wearing a nurse's uniform. I would have remembered that. Thank you. You've been very helpful, Jordan said before exiting the gift shop. Whoever the woman was, she was involved in this case somehow. I've got names, Al said, a note of triumph in her voice. She stood and walked over to the whiteboard. Meet Adrian and Susanna Petrov. Al scribbled the names quickly above the pictures. Adrian Petrov is the leader of a large gang in Chicago, and Narcotics believes he is the head of a drug organization. I've got an address, too, Jordan added as his computer pulled up the information. 233 Palisades Drive. Oh, and guess what Adrian drives? I'm going to go out on a limb and say a black truck, Stone supplied. Okay, you two go check out the place. Take Albright and Gibbons with you. I'll stay here and see what I can get from the Petrovs. The 4 cops nodded at each other and headed out. Jordan was beginning to feel as if he spent more time on the road than at his desk lately. 233 Palisades Drive was a large 2-story house on the outskirts of town. Jordan doubted they would meet resistance, but they went out with guns drawn anyway. They didn't have a search warrant yet, but the garage had windows, and the view inside revealed a black Ford truck. Enough probable cause for a closer look. Albright got the side door opened, and they stepped inside. I'd say this is your vehicle. Jordan stared at the dented front end and smiled. Adrian had obviously tried to have it fixed, but there was enough damage and a few conspicuous flecks of red paint remaining that he was sure this was the vehicle they were looking for. He'd finally be able to tell Tia it was over. How are you two doing? Jordan asked as he entered Tia's room an hour later. They turned fear-filled eyes on him. Did you get the guy? Brody asked. Who was he? Jordan nodded. We did. His name is Adrian Petrov. He's the leader of one of the bigger gangs out of Chicago and the head of a drug organization. He isn't saying much right now, but Stone will take care of that. We did manage to ascertain his address. He turned to Tia, and a slight smile pulled at his lips. Where we found a black Ford truck, and though we tried to have it fixed, we are almost certain it was the same truck that hit you. It's over, Tia. That's wonderful. Brody turned to Tia, and a broad grin graced his features. Tia forced a smile in return, but it was still riddled with worry. Wait, what about the nurse? We got her too. Susanna Petrov, his wife. She's not talking either, but from what we can gather, they obtained uniforms when they saw on the news that you were in ICU. We're not sure whether she was merely keeping him informed or if she was a backup plan, but we do know that she's the one who bought the flowers. I showed pictures to the clerk at the gift shop and he was able to ID her. What about Rico? Jordan's jaw clenched and his eyes shifted just slightly. Rico was the one missing link. He's in the wind. We think he's in Chicago hiding out and trying to clean up this mess, but I promise you, we're still looking for him. Thank you, Detective Graves. Call me Jordan, he said as he held her gaze. Yes, thank you, Jordan, Brody said, clapping a hand on Jordan's shoulder before turning back to Tia. We need to monitor you to be sure the insulin didn't damage anything. But if all goes well, and as long as your fever is still gone, you might be able to leave the hospital tomorrow." She should be glad, but the expression on her face looked anything but. Jordan stepped forward, hoping to ease her unease. "I know this is a lot to deal with, Tia. If you'd like to stay in town a little longer, I can find you a temporary place and set you up with a counselor who might be able to work through some of the trauma with you." Tia smiled up at him. "Thank you. I might take you up on that. And I don't know how your recovery will be, but I own a restaurant. I have a need for a good hostess if your doctor says it's okay." Brody nodded. "I'd be okay with it as long as she can stay off her leg. It would be great if you stayed in town and I was able to check up on you as well." "Thank you, Jordan. I think I'll spend tonight thinking about where I see my life going from here, and I'll let you know." "You do that." He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. "I know Al gave you a card the first day we were here, but this one has my personal cell. You call me if you want some help. I'm sorry this happened to you, but you are strong. You will be okay." Chapter 10. "Hey, I thought you were going to focus on a movie night with me now that the case is over," Cassidy said, laying a hand on his arm. They were sitting on the couch, but Jordan had no idea what the movie on the television was about. His mind was still on Tia. "Almost over," Jordan said. "Rico Riordan is still out there somewhere." "And you'll find him," Cassidy said. "You always do." Jordan smiled at his girlfriend and opened his arm for her to curl into. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Well, saved me from a stalker for one," she said before placing a kiss on his lips. "But you're an amazing man and probably would have won me regardless." "I just wish there was more I could do for Tia. She's going to be released tomorrow, and I can still see the fear in her eyes. I just wish I could give her more assurance." "She's being released tomorrow?" Cassidy asked. Jordan heard the tone in her voice and glanced down at her. "Yeah, why? What's going on in that pretty head of yours?" "Well, I can't help with easing her fear, but I do know something that would be good to do." "What's that?" "She hasn't had any visitors, right? Not friends, anyway?" "No." What was Cassidy getting at? "So she's been in the hospital gown the whole time, right?" Jordan shrugged. "I guess so." "Well, she can't go home in a hospital gown, so how about we get her some clothes?" As her words sunk in, Jordan's lips pulled into a wide smile, and he kissed Cassidy again. "You're amazing. Why didn't I think of that?" "Probably because you're not a girl," Cassidy said, swatting his chest playfully. "Now we just need her size." Jordan's face fell. He had no idea what her size was, or how to tell. "How do we do that?" Cassidy chuckled and moved out of his arms to stand before him. "Is she about my size? Larger? Smaller?" Jordan had never seen Tia standing, but he guessed she was a few inches shorter and a little smaller. "Smaller, but not by much, and a little shorter." "See, was that so hard? We'll pick up some outfits with elastic waists, 1 and 2 sizes smaller than me. Something is bound to fit, at least until she can purchase more herself." Jordan stood and wrapped his arms around Cassidy. "You, Cassidy Marcel, are 1 in a million. You know that?" She smiled up at him as her arms moved to his neck. "I do, but I certainly don't mind hearing it again." Jordan chuckled as he leaned down to place his lips on hers. He still couldn't believe his luck in finding Cassidy, and he would tell her every day if that's what it took to keep her in his life. Chapter 11. Jordan knocked on Tia's doorframe before entering the next morning. "Brody said you could use a lift." "Yeah, I could. Plus, I thought I'd take you up on your offer for a place to stay and a job. I'd like to stay in town a little longer." Jordan was glad to hear that, and the corners of his lips twitched as he entered, and set the bag beside her on the bed. "Would that have anything to do with a handsome doctor by chance?" "It might," she said. "But I also don't know if there's much to go back to in California. I feel like I can start over here. Except..." "Except what?" Tia sighed and shook her head. I had a dream last night that someone is still after me. I'm sure it was due to the activity yesterday, but do you think there's any chance that it might be true? Jordan ran a hand across his chin, wishing he could allay her fears. I'd be lying if I said no. I do think we got the main people involved, but there's always the chance that someone else decides to seek retribution. If it makes you feel better, the lady who runs the house I'm taking you to is former military. She'll keep an eye on you. Did you get any news on Rico? He shook his head. Sorry, we're checking with the PD in Chicago, but it's going to take some time. Thanks, Jordan. You're welcome. Now, in that bag are some clothes and shoes. My girlfriend Cassidy deduced that you had none here. She picked them out, but I had to guess on your size, so don't blame her if they're off. She did grab some things with drawstrings, so the size shouldn't matter too much. Tia's fingers touched the bag, and her voice was quiet and full of emotion when she spoke again. Thank you, Jordan, and tell Cassidy thank you. He nodded, embarrassed, and took a step back. I'll give you a chance to change and see about getting a wheelchair so we can get you out of here. He shut the door behind him and turned to the main ICU desk. How can I get a wheelchair for Tia's sweet child? She's checking out. I'll order you one right away, sir, the nurse said as she picked up a phone. Can I get a wheelchair to ICU? Thank you. She smiled at Jordan as she replaced the phone. It'll be just a minute. Jordan nodded and waited for the orderly to arrive with the chair. When he finally came around the corner, Jordan took the chair and returned to Tia's door. He knocked lightly. It's Jordan. Can I come in? Yes, come on in. Hey, looking good, he said as he wheeled a chair in. She had managed to get on a stretchy pair of pants and a shirt, and neither appeared to be swimming on her. He'd have to tell Cassidy she did a wonderful job in choosing the outfits. You about ready? I just got called back to work, so I'm afraid I'll have to drop you and run. That's fine, Jordan. Really, you've done so much for me. Jordan could hear the emotion in her voice, and he wished he could do more. He wished he could assure her she was safe. But while he couldn't do that, he was going to do the next best thing. He was taking Tia to Cara Hunter's house. Though technically a bed and breakfast, Cara specialized in helping people who needed to get back on their feet or needed extra protection. Former military, Cara had never completely adjusted to civilian life and was always willing to help out. Cara was as close as Jordan could get to having someone protect Tia 24/7. Jordan parked the car in front of a weathered-looking Rambler close to the beach. The yellow paint was faded, but still cheery. Sorry, it's not much to look at on the outside, but Cara takes good care of the inside. It's fine, Tia said. Hopefully I don't have to inconvenience her too long. Jordan touched her arm. It's no inconvenience. We take care of each other here. Tia smiled and thanked him, but it was a small smile. Jordan hoped one day he would see a genuine smile on her face. Come on, I'll introduce you and help you get settled before I jet back to work. He turned the engine off and walked around to Tia's side. Before helping her out, he grabbed her crutches out of the back seat, handed them to her, and made sure she was stable. Only then did he grab her bag. Jordan led the way up the short walk and pushed open the door without knocking. Cara had told him long ago he was welcome any time. Cara, it's Jordan and Tia, the woman I told you about. A woman with short, spiky hair appeared in the doorway. Trim and athletic, Cara looked as if she could tangle with the boys any day with her broad shoulders and bold arm definition. Jordan, good to see you again. She extended a hand in greeting. Jordan shook her hand and then turned to Tia. This is Tia. She's recovering from memory loss and a few attempts on her life. She's going to need some help getting back on her feet. Cara extended her hand to Tia. It's a pleasure to meet you, and any friend of Jordan's is welcome here as long as needed. Tia shook the woman's hand and returned the smile. Thank you. I appreciate it. Jordan wished he could stay until he made sure Tia was situated. But duty called. I hate to run, but I have to get to work. Cara will take good care of you, but please call me if you need anything. Jordan squeezed her shoulder before dropping her bag and exiting out the front door. Chapter 12. Jordan's phone rang as he sat down for dinner across from Cassidy. It was Cara's number, but she rarely called him. A feeling of dread spread through him as he answered the phone. "Kara, is everything okay?" Across from him, Cassidy set down her fork and fixed questioning eyes on him. "Jordan?" The woman's voice was a hoarse whisper, but even so, he could tell this was Tia on the other end, and not Kara. "Tia, what's wrong?" "I'm at Kara's, but someone's here. The electricity just went off. Kara sent me to the closet to call you." Jordan heard an intake of breath, and then the muffled sounds of a man's voice, followed by a scream, and then silence. "Tia? Tia!" "What is it?" Cassidy asked. "Trouble. Sorry, I have to run." He placed a quick kiss on her lips before grabbing his keys and gun. "I promise I'll make it up to you." "I know you will. Be safe," she called after him. Jordan flashed her a wink, but he was already dialing Stone's number as he stepped into the cool night air. "Sir, there's trouble over at Kara's. Can you send everyone?" Jordan put the lights on, but left the siren off as he drove through the city streets. When he reached Kara's street, he turned the lights off as well and coasted to a stop a few doors down. Stone, Al, and Albright pulled up just after him. Jordan wondered briefly where Givens was, but he knew the man lived farther away. "What do we have?" Stone asked as they consulted together. "At least one unknown assailant in the house," Jordan said. "I have to assume from the phone call he has Tia. I'm not sure where Kara is, but she'll be an asset if she's uninjured." "All right, we go in with signals only. We don't want to give away our position in case there's more than one." The group nodded, and Jordan led the way into the darkened house. No sound came from the front entranceway, but he could hear voices down the hall toward the living room. He motioned to the officers behind him before continuing down the hall. When they reached the living room, he stopped short. Even in the dim light, he could see that Kara had already taken care of things. Rico Reardon lay on the ground, his hands zip-tied together. Brody sat a few feet away next to Tia. Blood ran from his head, and Jordan assumed Rico had jumped him, either before continuing into the house or before he found Tia. Tia appeared scared, but otherwise unharmed. "I'll call for a bus," Al said as she made her way to Brody and Tia. Stone and Albright hauled Rico up and led him out of the house as Jordan crossed to Kara, who was rubbing her arms. Jordan knew her well enough to know she must have overpowered Rico somehow, possibly a chokehold. He was aware of her college nickname, the Leech. "Thank you. I knew you were the right woman for the job." She shot him a glare as she massaged her forearms. "Next time, a little warning of what I might be facing would be nice." "I would have warned you, except we didn't know what to expect. We thought it was over after the attempt at the hospital, but we didn't realize Rico was not just the front for the organization. He was the head." "Yeah, we know," Kara said. "He had a hard time keeping his mouth shut, at least while he had the gun on Tia." "Does that mean it's really over now?" Tia asked. "It does. Rico's going away for a long time with his wife and the Petrovs. You may have to testify, but we all owe you a debt of gratitude. I know it wasn't your intent, but through your actions, you've managed to help us take down a pretty large drug organization." Brody smiled and squeezed Tia's shoulder. "See? I told you everything happens for a reason. I think you've just made up for a lot of the mistakes in your past." Jordan smiled at the couple. He had a feeling this would bond them together, allowing them to survive anything thrown at them in the future. As for himself, he was glad to mark this case complete. With Rico in custody, all the known players were accounted for, and Jordan believed they could finally call this one done. If you'd like to know the rest of Tia and Brody's story, be sure to listen to Lost Memories and New Beginnings to hear this story from their point of view. And if you'd like to read more about Jordan and Cassidy, pick up Fire Games, the first book in the Men of Fire Beach series. The end. This has been a recording of When Questions Abound, a Men of Fire Beach short story, written by Lorana Hoops, narrated by Lorana Hoops, copyright 2019.